Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say, and welcome to our class on the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as translated by, interpreted by, and commented on by Swami Prabhavananda. He titled the book How to Know God, so that we would understand exactly what Patanjali was driving at right from the cover of the book. And it is a magnificent interpretation of the aphorisms because the Swami understood them from wisdom and realization, not as words on the page. And as Brahmadas pointed out before our session formally began, the Swami was very fluent in Sanskrit and in English, being a Shakespeare scholar, but he also availed himself of the help of Christopher Isherwood, who was himself a magnificent writer in English. So with that, any comments or questions from what we've read before? Anything that anyone would like to add or say or ask? All right, dears. We're going to start in chapter 2 with aphorism 12. We've gotten through aphorism 12 of chapter 2. And I don't know the page in the...
It's page 131, Brother Shakra.
Okay, 131.
Aphorism number 12.
Okay. Jeff Solich is rehearsing for a Christmas concert today, so he's off duty. So Haima will serve as our reader. And thank you so very much, Haima.
Thank you so much,
Avanti.
Good morning, everyone. I'm starting on page 131, aphorism number 12. A man's latent tendencies have been created by his past thoughts and actions. These tendencies will bear fruits both in this life and in lives to come.
Would you read that again, please?
Yes, I will. Number 12. A man's latent tendencies have been created by his past thoughts and actions. These tendencies will bear fruits both in this life and in lives to come.
This is exactly what we will talk about tomorrow morning. The topic of the talk is, what do you rehearse? And these past thoughts and actions, as well as our present ones, are what we rehearse. We go over them and over them, and as if they were the reality. And until we change them, nothing is going to change. So, or very little is going to change. So this is the point that Patanjali is making. these thoughts and actions and our speech, which is a form of action, of course, will bear fruit now and in the future. So let's see what the Swami has to say about this, unless there are any comments or questions from anyone else. Okay, please go ahead, Haimadidi.
Aphorism number 13. So long as the cause exists, it will bear fruits, such as rebirth, a long or a short life, and the experience of pleasure and of pain. I'll read one more time. Number 13. So long as the cause exists, it will bear fruits, such as rebirth, a long or a short life, and the experience of pleasure and of pain. Number 14. Experiences of pleasure and of pain are the fruits of merit and demerit, respectively. Experiences of pleasure and of pain are the fruits of merit and demerit, respectively. Moving on to number 15 on page 132. But the man of spiritual discrimination regards all these experiences as painful. For even the enjoyment of present pleasure is painful, since we already fear its loss. Past pleasure is painful because renewed cravings arise from the impressions it has left upon the mind. And how can any happiness be lasting if it depends only upon our moods? For these moods are constantly changing as one or another of the ever-warring gunas seizes control of the mind. Let me read this one more time, Brother Shankara. Number 15. But the man of spiritual discrimination regards all these experiences as painful. For even the enjoyment of present pleasure is painful, since we already fear its loss. Past pleasure is painful because renewed cravings arise from the impressions it has left upon the mind. And how can any happiness be lasting if it depends only upon our moods? For these moods are constantly changing as one or another of the ever-varying guna seizes control of the mind.
Ever-warring.
Ever-warring? Okay.
Yes, they're at war with one another. The gunas are constantly struggling with one another. Their struggle, Swami Vivekananda says, is for equilibrium. But it appears to us, as they appear in us, that they are struggling with one another for control of us. So the ever-warring gunas seize control of the mind. One or more of them seize control of the mind. If we don't have control of the mind, that's what happens. So before we go on, so we've read 12, 13, 14, and 15 that are all connected. Otherwise, the Swami would have commented on each one individually. Clearly, there's a through line here about our actions and our thoughts and our speech. So is there any comment or question from anyone or concern that this raises that you'd like to voice? This is what it means to study the art of spirituality together.
There is so much truth on number 12, which I totally agree. We humans mostly worry about the past and the future, never live in the moment that is right now, right in front of us.
Yeah.
We forget that. Always past is haunting and the worried about the future. That's so common in our world.
What did a great soul offer me that rang so true I danced with joy? Set aside the past. Stop looking ahead. What you know already has already been said. So
I agree with Haima, and I love that poem, that tanka, but I don't think that that's what is being said here in these shlokas. Because it's, the whole idea is for us to be passersby, as it were, not get overly excited about happy, joyful, pleasurable stuff, and the opposite with the bad stuff. But let me pull this back up and be looking at what I'm looking at. It's still this kind of this linear sort of thing that I was mentioning last week. The merits and the demerits, and the business about pleasurable things being regarded as painful by the man of spiritual discrimination. I think that's sad. I mean, and that seems to conflict with the story, for instance, of Sri Dharananda's, yogurt, the bad boy yogurt story.
mm-hmm.
Unless I'm just, overthinking this or reading it wrong. But anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Well, they're very good thoughts and very auspicious thoughts. But we need to keep in mind that Patanjali, and therefore the Swami, are speaking from the viewpoint and perspective of Sankhya philosophy, which is emphatically linear and dualistic. So it doesn't have that unitary, it ends in this unitary experience or realization, but its process of getting there, this workbook, is, as you said, linear, somewhat literal, and definitely dualistic. So when Patanjali and therefore the Swami are speaking about these things or translating these things, they're speaking within that. That's why at the back of the Swami Prabhuvananda's translation of the Gita, there is this cosmology of the Gita, which explains in summary the Sankhya philosophy. And it is emphatically linear from cosmic principle number 1, Mahat, to cosmic principles in the 20s up to 24. One thing leads to this thing, leads to this thing, leads to this thing, leads to this thing, and so on. And the gunas are very much a part of it. So that's, I think, why this seems, as you said it does, Cindy, but it doesn't mean that it is the whole truth by any manner of means, and it certainly is not an absolute truth or dogma. Anything else from anyone? Thank you both, Haima and Cindy, for your comments.
So it actually reminds me that the whole objective of Patanjali is to get to the cessation of vritas or mind modification. If you keep that in mind, and then I think we also went through Sutra number 5, which talks about the various modification, and there are 2 classification. One is painful and non-painful. And I think the lesson there is that you need to, at first, take away the painful vrityas and replace it with non-painful one. And at some point, through everything else that happens in all the 190 sutras, you should be able to even take those non-painful ones away.
Yes, exactly.
This is a continuation Sutra number 12 here is saying that, well, now that you've said all that, what are you going to do with all the vrityas or mind modifications that are going to come because of your prior life? And so now that we're starting to deal with what the techniques in this methodology will be.
Precisely. And it is a technique-based methodology. This is a workbook. It goes from A to B to C, and as Swami Vivekananda points out, very scientifically explores the aspects of Raja Yoga, the yoga of the inner search rather than looking outside yourself. So this is again what Patanjali is pointing to. Looking outside yourself, whether it's pleasurable or painful, is pointless, fruitless. You have to turn inside. This is where he's leading us, that you must turn inside and away from the things of the senses, pleasurable or painful. We'll get there. Anything else from anyone? Thank you, Bashka. Okay, please, Haima, read on. Read what the
Operations
Swami
of
says.
anyone comment? Somebody said something.
I'm sorry, start over, dear. We're not hearing you. Start reading the Swami's commentary again.
Okay. Number 15.
Yes,
Okay. But the man of spiritual discrimination.
No. Just read what the Swami said. The operation.
Okay. The operations of the law of karma. See chapter 1, Aphorisms 2, 18 and 19. And the nature and functions of the gunas have already been fully described. Patanjali warns us here against imagining that some of our thoughts and acts have had and will have no consequences just because these consequences are not apparent. Our acts have created latent tendencies which will bear fruit in due season, perhaps conditioning the span and circumstances of future lives. Acts of merit will, it is true, produce results which can be described as pleasant, but pleasant and painful are only relative terms. Like good and bad, hot and cold, happy and unhappy, they are one of the pairs of opposites, which, in the phraseology of the Gita, form the seeming contradictions of our experience of the external world. From the standpoint of the man of spiritual discrimination, all experience is painful insofar as it binds us to this world and renews our sense cravings. The only true happiness is in union with the Atman. All other happiness is relative, temporary, and therefore false.
Okay. That's a relatively short commentary, but I think warrants reading again. And it directly addresses what Cindy was getting at. So let's go over that again and see if there's any comment or question from anyone.
The operations of the law of karma and the nature and functions of the gunas have already been fully described. Patanjali warns us here against imagining that some of our thoughts and acts have had and will have no consequences just because these consequences are not apparent. Our acts have created latent tendencies which will bear fruit in due season, perhaps conditioning the span and circumstances of future lives. Acts of merit will, it is true, produce results which can be described as pleasant, but pleasant and painful are only relative terms. Like good and bad, hot and cold, happy and unhappy, they are one of the pairs of opposites which, in the phraseology of Gita, form the seeming contradictions of our experience of the external world. From the standpoint of the man of spiritual discrimination, all experience is painful insofar as it binds us to this world and renews our sense cravings. The only true happiness is in union with the Atman. All other happiness is relative, temporary, and therefore false. Makes good sense.
Any reaction from anyone to, like I said, this addresses what Cindy said, and it's just contrasting the external world and our experience of it, which is inevitably one of opposites, and the gesturing toward the internal world, the world of the Atman, is the only true source of true happiness, that is to say, lasting, changeless freedom and happiness. As Bhaskar pointed out, free of the modifications of the mind. No more vrittis, modifications, in the chitta, the mind stuff. We have to keep in mind when we say that the mind stuff is not something of the head, not even something of the head and heart. The mind stuff exists throughout our whole being, even what seem to be dead parts of us, like our hair and our fingernails and toenails. Those don't appear to be alive, but they still are part of the mind stuff, every cell in our body. So, and they all react to the gunas and therefore have a certain power over us. This is why Holy Mother used to take her nail cuttings and offer them to Simalakshmi, Simahavani, the goddess of the Jayarambati village where she lived.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I think for me, the key sentence in Swami's commentary is from the standpoint of the man of spiritual discrimination, all experience is painful insofar as it binds us to the world and renews our sense cravings. I had started reading Doctrine of Karma, Swami Abhedananda's,
Yes.
and oh my gosh, it's an eye-opener. And I've only read section 1, and the little bit of it that struck me was where he clarifies that the action as well as the result are both karma, or cause and effect are both karma, if I understood it correct.
You
And
did
so
understand correctly what he said, yes.
okay, so if we do something good, or it's something that gives us a sense of happiness, peace, whatever, on any plane, then we tend to do that again. And so then we've done the karma, then we get the result karma, then we do more action karma, then the result karma. So even if we do so-called, and he also says there's nothing like pure good or pure evil, there are also mixed results. So even if, I guess, one somehow manages to do quote unquote all good, it's only going to keep on pulling us into that loop of karma.
Precisely.
My only question is, if the gunas are driving all this and we don't have, I don't know if control is the word, but how do we overcome the effect of the gunas towards cutting off this cycle of action and reaction?
Well, there's Patanjali's way, which is to learn to turn inside, starting with pratyahara, abandoning the senses, abandoning the effects and attraction of the senses. It actually starts with the yamas and niyamas, but he gestures toward it there. But he specifically says, all right, having understood what it is that's entrapping you, the yamas, and done the observances, the niyamas that are replace this self-centeredness of the yama world. Now what do you do? Well, first there's asana and then pranayama, these preliminary steps toward gaining control of the body and its functions. And then you turn away from the realm of the senses, both externally and their residual effects and spontaneous arousal of cravings in the mind, even though you've turned your attention inside. Now you're encountering what happened before and imagining what might happen in the future. So these are all this cause and effect chain that needs to be broken by turning away from it toward what? That which does not change, that which does not have karma, which is the realm of Saguna Atman or Saguna Brahman, pure consciousness, but expressed within Maya, but the very highest form of Maya. Does that get it, Swayam?
Yes, it does. It does get it.
Okay.
It's so difficult, but
I'd like
Yes,
I'd
please,
like to say I'd like to say something on that.
please, Robert.
Yeah, I find it true what she said. If you're having a so-called positive experience, how it's difficult to leave that experience. But if you look at life and how it evolves, that rarely, if ever, happens because of the fluctuation of ups and downs. Nothing stays in one groove for very long. The balance of nature makes it up and down. So you don't really have to deal with that situation that much because it rarely ever happens.
All right.
The fluctuations of nature.
Well, yes, but we yearn for it to happen nevertheless.
Yeah.
And so there's the trap, the yearning. Whether it actually repeats, because as you said, some variation of it repeats, something like it. When we go to bed at night, no one night is the same as the next night, as the last night, and the night will not be the same as last night. But there are similarities. There's a certain amount of continuity. Now, granted that continuity is created by the mind, it doesn't actually exist. And this is, Swayam says she's read the first of Swami Abhedananda's book on karma. He will get to this later, that our sense of continuity is an absolute fiction.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a reality, which is just what you were pointing out, Robert. You came at it from a different direction because everything is changing. It isn't going to be the same. We are the ones who want it to be the same and even try to make it be the same. Sometimes try very hard to make it be the same.
I agree with you, Brother Shankara. We create that reality to stay in that loop.
Yes.
Once we realize ourselves, it's a hard, difficult process, of course. And then slowly that changes. We get out of that loop. Then we keep moving forward,
Yes.
step by step. And it's not easy. It's not easy.
Oh
As you
no,
said,
it's
never easy. It's a tough process.
yes.
A long process of all the 8 limbs of yoga. We have to observe those and all those.
Well, it's actually only the first 6 that we must observe. As Patanjali says, the first 6 limbs of yoga are self-effort. And so we have to observe. Then the observing becomes somewhat different. We simply notice in limbs 7 and 8 that something is happening to us, as he points it out. So, and Swami Vivekananda comments on all this so eloquently, as does Swami Prabhupada, but it's clear at the end of the book. So we won't try to jump to the central square. We'll follow what's here. But you're right, Haima, you're right.
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
It's a long and winding road that leads.
It's a long road. Yes, we're there. We're on that road.
Yes.
We're getting there slowly, slowly.
Thank you. And thank you, Robert. Anything else from anyone?
So just a quick question on the last comment you made about the 8 steps, the first 6 being your self-effort and the last 2 being something else is happening. Is that something divine grace? Is that something what you guys are covering on Wednesday evenings?
Yes. That's precisely it, Bhaskar. You nailed it.
Yes,
What happens is
automatically.
the Purusha Kara, the self-effort that is necessary to perfect the first 6 steps. And of course, you never reach that perfection, but it is that effort toward perfection that prepares and purifies you.
Mhm.
Then there's no guarantee of nirvikalpa samadhi, and therefore kaivalya, nirvikalpa samadhi being the seedless samadhi of which he spoke before, Patanjali spoke before. There's nothing left to bear fruit or to grow a seed. There's no mind there. There's no left mind, no right mind come to that. So this is something that happens to you if you have purified yourself, but there's no guarantee that it will happen. All of the traditions say this: Sufism, Catholicism, even the modern people like Richard Rohr and so on. There's no guarantee, but it won't happen if you don't purify yourself, or is much less likely to happen. So 7 and 8 are something that happens to you by, as you said, divine grace. Sri Ramakrishna says, when mother turns the key in the lock and opens the door, then you will go beyond, and not until. And everything that happens before that is within time, space, and causation without exception, Sri Ramakrishna says. No matter how high you soar in meditation, as long as it is an experience of meditating, it is still within time, space, and causation. And this is what Patanjali points out also. You may succeed in your leaving the world of the senses behind, perfecting concentration, and moving on to meditation. But it is still this meditation with seed, this savi chara samadhi. And so that's as much as any of us can know at this point. Thank you, Bhaskar. Anything else?
Yeah, Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
Again, trying to digest Swami Abhedananda's whatever little bit I've read, he includes evil actions of evil, even to that which destroys the interests of oneself, let alone neighbors and society at large and all that. So hypothetically, if we get to the point by yamas and niyamas and all that, but all the first 6 steps, and get to the point where we have kind of just given everything away, but we, in that regard, if we use that definition, then we are still doing an evil action, because it is detrimental to the interest of one's own self. So that's why I feel like at that point, I mean, only divine grace can really sort of get that wind out.
No. It's not destructive to your self-interest here. This is you and I need to talk about this, if that's what you've understood from Abhedananda so far. That no, this process of purification is not self-destructive. It is destructive of the small self, yes, but it is freeing. It is increasingly freeing the capital S self, which is the Saguna Atman. We know nothing about the Nirguna Atman or Nirguna Brahman. There's nothing to be said about it. But we can say that there is more and more happiness, because that is the nature. All of the divine attributes are of the nature of this Saguna Atman. So when we reach that state of purification, this is Savichara Samadhi or Savikalpa Samadhi, where you have this unitary experience, and it's transformative. You cannot anymore be in the world as you were, but you are still in the world. Those who experience that which is in steps 7 and 8, limbs 7 and 8 of Patanjali's yoga, they leave the world behind. As a matter of fact, when they're in that state of samadhi, their body appears to be dead. This was an eternal concern of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples. Was he really dead this time, or would he return? Had he left the body behind? Well, this was, but he would return, and it was slow, and you could see it was actually painful to return and re-inhabit this small pillowcase, as he said.
Thank you for that clarification, Brother Shankara. I see where I was making a erroneous connection.
Yeah. Okay.
Brother,
Good. Glad you brought it up.
Brother Shankara.
Yes.
This is Stephen. May I ask, when you say the small self, is that the same as the ego or the ahamkara?
It's the same as the ego, but the ego, our ego, is a reflection. Our sense of small self or separate self is a reflection of the ahamkara. There is only one ahamkara, one eye maker. There's only one divine being, one divine presence. Through the operations of the gunas, we call it Maya, it seems to us as if there is this world and we are in the world separately. It is an illusion. It is a delusion. So the ego, or small s self, is a reflection of that one I maker, or that one capital E ego, that because of what Swami Sridharananda called the dirt and dust on the mirror of our heart, this is a blurred and fragmented reflection. And as such, we grasp at it as the reality of our self. It's one of the reasons that our small s self is so limited in character, because it doesn't have the attributes of the full capital S self that is reflected in the mirror, as another term for that is the Saguna Atman, the Atman with attributes, the Atman within time, space, and causation.
Mhm.
So it is the ahamkara, but it's a reflection and a flawed one.
I see. Thank you, brother.
Okay, thanks for asking the question. Very, very germane to the good discussion we're having here. Who is speaking? Who is this small s self?
Yeah, this is Steve speaking to you, brother.
Yes. Yes, I got that.
Thank you, brother.
So I just had a follow-up question on these pairs of opposites.
Yes.
It seems like the principle there is that you'll have something that you're unhappy or happy or good or bad. So basically, you should go from negative to positive. You should go from bad to good. But then there is also this neutral. And so what is the takeaway? Is the takeaway that we go from bad to good, and then from good to neutral, and then from neutral to zero cessation? Is that the takeaway? And
Go ahead, Bhaskar, I'm sorry.
the second part to that question is that if I apply this scenario, and this may be where Cindy was asking a question, if I apply that scenario to ethics and morality, so obviously we'll all agree that bad morality, bad ethics is definitely not. But then if you apply that to the positive part, good morality and good ethics is good. But if you apply that principle, it means you should get away from that. You should get to a neutral ethics or neutral morality, and ultimately even get rid of that to come to the cessation of mind stuff or vrittis.
This whole realm of duality is, let's just start with this. It is a fabrication of these vrittis. This whole business of bad and good. That's why ultimately we have to transcend both. Now, karma, this is the yin yang symbol. Even in the blackest karma, there is a glimmer of light. Even in the lightest, brightest karma, there is a glimmer of darkness. Now, in between, there is this, it's really an infinite spectrum between the seemingly purely black karma and the purely white karma. There's all this gray. So we move slowly along this spectrum of purification to where our karma and the karma we're generating is, by we, I mean the bodies, the stardust spacesuits. The Atman, even Saguna Atman, generates no karma. And the purified, the realized soul, generates new karma. Even whatever actions they perform is on behalf of others, and the fruits of their karma go to others. So this good and bad business, as Swami Brahmananda said, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. There is none. It's a spectrum. So ultimately, all our self-efforts, all of our bright karma will result in purification. It leads to savikalpa or savichara samadhi, this samadhi with seeds. Everything is still there. All this duality that is a fabrication of our minds, because that's what we want to do. As Swami Sarvapriyananda said, well, why does that which produced the mind do it? Because it can. And so there's no answer really to why this happens. All we can do is follow one of the workbooks for the 4 yogas that Vivekananda taught until we come to the conclusion that we really don't understand. And in that quiet of not understanding, which becomes a kind of silence, then we hear something else. And that hearing something else then becomes this savikalpa samadhi. But it is a process. It's a process. Each of the yogas has its own process for it.
Thank you.
And of course, this is not something that the mind ultimately is going to be able to fully grasp. The infinite does not fit into the finite mind. The operations of the infinite, the fact that Brahman does not exist but is existence itself. Brahman is not knowing, Brahman is knowledge itself. Brahman does not love or it is bliss itself, it is love itself. That absolute is beyond the grasp of the finite mind, of the small s self. And the thing that we have to remember over and over and over, for at least from here it seems to me, that if we're going to remain in any way sane, we have to remember over and over and over what Krishna stresses so strongly in chapter 3 of the Gita. The idea that we are the doers, that we generate these actions and their fruits, is a delusion. The gunas alone are the doer. The gunas are the instrument of the divine. So as Sri Ramakrishna repeats again and again, God alone is the doer. All else is illusory. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means it's temporary, finite.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
a quick question about Saguna Atman or Brahman. So it's Brahman with attributes is Saguna Atman,
Yes.
Saguna Brahman. So the attribute, is it only the Sattvic Guna that
No,
is
the
represented
gunas have nothing to do. The gunas have nothing to do with the Atman. The attributes of the Atman are simply a part of its nature. Like sugar is sweet, milk is white, fire burns. There's nothing intentional or gunic about it. It's simply the nature of the Atman to have what we call the divine attributes of love, compassion, strength, courage, resilience, all of these things that we think of as the divine attributes. It's not that they're doing it, it's that they are that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the Saguna Atman, though within time, space, and causation, is not personal. It's not your Atman or my Atman, though it seems to be. And their gunas are not in any way associated with the Atman except as an expression of its intentions. And according to Sri Krishna, it does have intentions and does share our experiences, although not actively, but completely passively. And therefore, Sri Krishna says, validates them. This is a very productive discussion. This is exactly what this is about, what this should generate. So glad we do it. Anything else from anyone? Okay, Ima, read on.
Number 16, aphorism. The pain which is yet to come may be avoided. One more time. The pain which is yet to come may be avoided.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is 16, yes. The pain which is yet to come may be avoided. Yes.
May be avoided. There are three kinds of karma. The karma which has already been created and stored up so that it will bear fruit in some future life. The karma created in the past or in some previous life, which is bearing fruit at the present moment, and the karma which we are now in the process of creating by our thoughts and acts. Let me read that one more time, Brother Shankara. There are three kinds of karma. The karma which has already been created and stored up so that it will bear fruit in some future life. The karma created in the past or in some previous life, which is bearing fruit at the present moment, and the karma which we are now in the process of creating by our thoughts and acts.
And if you want precise definitions of these three kinds of karma, read Swami Abhedananda's book, The Principles of Karma. He defines them more fully and more intelligibly. By the way, this book, this by Abhedananda, is 4 lectures that he delivered at the University of California at Berkeley shortly after World War I. It's a magnificent book and does indeed give you a far, far, far greater understanding of karma, what is meant by karma, and of the gunas, and how the gunas and karma are inextricably linked, and how neither one of them are your doing, the true you. They are something of this spacesuit. They are something of this, as Sri Ramakrishna called it, pillowcase, that will arise and pass away. And as Sri Krishna says in the Gita in chapter 2, when you take this garment, when it's worn out, you cast it off. And if it's auspicious and appropriate, you take another garment to move forward. Because we have to have this garment to participate in this realm of time, space, and causation, which is the only realm in which we can move forward. This is the grace or glory of human birth. As Thomas Merton said when he had that experience at 4th and Walnut Streets in Louisville, Kentucky, in the shopping district, suddenly he became aware of how glorious it is to be a human being, how necessary it is to be a human being if you're going to manifest your divinity, and how everyone was walking around shining like the sun. And it broke his heart that he couldn't tell them about it. I mean, it literally made a mark on his heart that he wrote about this. He wrote about it. Anything else from anyone? All right. Please read that again about the 3 kinds of karma.
There are 3 kinds of karma. The karma which has already been created and stored up so that it will bear fruit in some future life. The karma created in the past or in some previous life, which is bearing fruit at the present moment. And the karma which are now in the process of creating by our thoughts and acts.
And when you achieve this state of no modifications, no mental modifications in the mind stuff, as Swami Vivekananda says in his preface and introduction to Raja Yoga, your universe disappears. All of this karma, all of this universe of yes and no, karma's blows, temptation's parade, all of this disappears. All of it simply disappears. The universe doesn't disappear, the universe that everyone shares and is fabricating by their own mental actions. That does not disappear. Your universe disappears. You disappear from this universe. This is Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And you may or may not return. You may or may not. Some people, their body simply falls, and that's that. Others return and stay according to the scriptures, and Sri Ramakrishna validates this by his own assertion that they may last for 21 days. Some little bit of prarabdha karma that has to be worked out. A very few have what Sri Ramakrishna calls the slender thread of ego, either of wisdom or of love, or very rarely of both, as is in his case, wisdom and love, which is a pure, harmless ego, and they serve as teachers. Otherwise, there would be no teachers. There would be no one to tell us that there is this possibility of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, of true Kaivalya, independence, pure consciousness apart from any limitation or dependency. So I think we'll leave it at that.
Okay, sure, Brother Shankar, I'll stop there.
And by the way, Jeff will not be serving as reader for the rest of this month because of his musical,
Okay.
his involvement in musical productions for Christmas.
I see, I'll be happy to do that if you want me to.
Yes. The thing to realize also is that on Saturday, the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, there will be no class because we will have the Christmas Eve worship.
Okay.
The Christmas Eve worship will be our second in-person gathering here at the center. The first will be the celebration of Holy Mother's birthday, her birth anniversary, which, though her birth anniversary is actually December 15th this year, the following Sunday is December 18th. And so there will be no talk on that day, of course, because there will be a celebration of Holy Mother's birthday. And we will then, having celebrated it in the chapel, and that will be available by Zoom also. But for those of you who do attend in person, we'll come into the monastery and share the prasad, being very careful of one another as we must. Everyone must be fully vaccinated. And when we're not actually eating, wearing a mask and so on, and a good quality mask. Then, of course, on the 25th of December, that being Christmas Day, there'll be no talk. But, just take a look at the December calendar as it appears in the newsletter and, and on the Facebook, on the website page. And you'll get, and if you, are there any questions about the December schedule? Okay. Om Hari Om. Om Sato Ma Satgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amrutangamaya. Abir Moiti. Oh, dearly beloved Lord, lead us from this realm of, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from this realm of endless noise and relentless confusion to thine abode of silence, serenity, clarity, and peace. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. O Lord, make it so. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Father and Mother. And may we all have the most joyous and fulfilling of holy day season. This is the season of holy days here in the West. And of course, it has all kinds of aspects. It started with, if you will, Diwali and all that. But now, after Thanksgiving, is the time of the Advent calendar and the birth of Christ, which is very, very much to be celebrated, as you'll see, on December the 24th, if you can join us either face-to-face or on Zoom, because the Christmas Eve worship will also be done in the chapel with Zoom availability while we're in there. And then those who attend in person will come into the monastery for some caroling, some stories of further stories about Christmas and just general celebration of Christmas. And then on New Year's Eve, there's the New Year's Eve meditation in the chapel, starting at 11:30 p.m. on the 31st and ending at 12:06 on the 1st. 36 minutes of meditation together. That will not be Zoomed. That particular thing in the chapel will not be Zoomed. And then we'll go into the monastery for a short fellowship after that, until 1 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day at 2:30 p.m., I believe it is, that's Kalpataru Day, New Year's Day. We'll again gather in the chapel and afterward come into the monastery. So that's our holy days. Anything else from anyone? Any comments or questions or anything wonderful that you'd like to share from your own self?
Well, you made me think about the chocolate advent calendars, the ones you peel back and you get a piece of chocolate and according to my chocolate advent calendar, Christmas is in 2 days.
Well,
I didn't make that up. I saw
So,
that.
Cindy, you can eat more chocolate until 25th then, right?
So, dears, anything else from anyone? Thank you, Cindy. Christmas is, as it's said, though Christ be born 1,000 times in Bethlehem again, he's never truly born unless in the hearts of men and women. So that happens every day. Yes, Swam.
Yeah, the 36-minute, is that a tradition? What is the significance of precisely 36 minutes?
Well, it adds to 9, dear. That's the sacred number. 108 beads on the mala, 1,008 names of Lord Shiva. 36 minutes is just, it's long enough to start in the old year, take us a few minutes into the new year. And we won't have any doubt, even in the chapel, when that happens, because the noise will become deafening in the neighborhood. But this is why it's not being Zoomed. I don't want to ask anyone to come and be our Zoom maven at that time of night. Anyone who wants to join us, they can come physically. And for those of you who are far away, you can just think about that. And if you want to do it on your own, wherever you are, sit for 36 minutes from 11:30 on the 31st till 12:06, and make japam or hold whatever thoughts you wish. That's a very auspicious thing to do. We don't tell anyone what to do on that. It's a silent meditation, except right at midnight we do say Happy New Year, and then go back to our quietness. Anything else from anyone, dears?
So I was kind of curious what book you will pick up on Wednesday evenings once you are finished with Divine Grace.
Oh, the Gita. We'll start the Gita.
Swami
Prabhavananda's translation, interpretation, and commentary. Very little commentary within the text itself, except in the form of some footnotes. But he has, there's an introduction to the book by Aldous Huxley, which we will read. There is an appendix at the back that the Swami was very anxious that you read before you start reading the Gita, and it's called The Cosmology of the Gita, which is the Swami's very artful and very, it's just a magnificent summary of Sankhya and the 24 cosmic principles. The reason for that is the cosmology of the Gita, this Sankhya philosophy from which Krishna is speaking, is entirely different than, though it is left-brained and linear, it is not scientific and reductionist in the sense of our modern way of thinking. It is not materialistic and scientific in the sense that we understand science now. And so it's very important for us to grasp at least have some grasp of what were the frame of reference, the perspective from which Krishna is speaking. It makes so much more sense if we understand it from that perspective. So those are the two things we'll read first before we start on the Gita itself. And we will start with chapter 1. Oftentimes people skip chapter 1. But I think it's very important for us to understand what it is that Arjuna wants to avoid by saying, I will not fight, and throwing down his weapons. What is it he doesn't want to do? So we'll start with chapter 1. That's what we'll take up on Wednesday nights. And on Tuesday nights, after we finish the Sri Sharada Devi, her divine play, we'll take up the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. So Tuesday nights, when we finish, and we're very close to the end of Swami Chaitananda's book on Sri Sharada Devi, Holy Mother. We're just reading about the last few days of her life. And then we'll take up the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna on Tuesday nights and Bhagavad Gita on Wednesday nights. Thank you for asking the question, Bhaskar. Anyone else? All right, dears. Until tomorrow morning, you'll hear a great deal of an amplification of what we've just been talking about today in the talk titled, What Do You Rehearse? What is it that are your past and present thoughts, speech, and action producing, and how to go beyond that? Principles and practices of Karma Yoga. All right, dears. Any final thought from anyone?
Is this the Gita we are going to follow?
Is that Swami Prabhavananda's? I can't see, dear. You know I can't.
But it's translated by Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Eastwood.
That's the one.
Okay.
That's the very one.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
And with any good fortune, we'll have the same readers on Tuesday and Wednesday nights that we have now. Tuesday night is Haima, and Wednesday night is Swayam, and then we're gonna be doing How to Know God for a while yet. And though Jeff is not available for the rest of December, he will be available again in January to continue our discussion. And there's only a couple more classes in December anyway on this book because of the holy days. So, Jai Shri Ramakrishna, Jai Ma, Jai Yesu Deva, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.